Welcome everyone to our new episode of VIK Podcast. I'm Cristián Vallejo, Chief Winemaker of VIK, and today we have a very special guest from United States, Lisa Perroti Brown, Master of Wine. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, for us, it's an amazing opportunity to know and to get into that beautiful, let's say, knowledge of wine that you have as a master of wine. So this time we will be more talking about your perspective, more than our perspective as a winery, because it's very interesting for us and for everybody to know how you feel, your vision about the wine, which is something very unique, right? So just to start, we know that you lived and worked in London, in Tokyo, Singapore. Now you're in Napa Valley, which is an amazing place that I love too much. I worked there in 1999 in Franciscan Winery. Today it's the Prisoner, right? But at that time it was Quintessa too, belongs to the Uneos family. So I spent 6 months in Napa. So for me, it's a very important episode of my life as a winemaker, and because of that, I'm now fan of the Warriors in the basketball and the NBA. So so now you're in Napa. You have a global vision. So please, Lisa. Tell us a little bit about your career, your Master of Wine, a little introduction for everybody here.
Yeah. Well, I started out in the wine industry, gosh, you know what? It was over 30 years ago, so that kind of dates me. And I started out, I moved to London after graduating from college, Colby College in Maine. I wanted to become a playwright. I studied English literature and performing arts. And I wanted to be a playwright, and I moved to London after doing my junior year abroad there because I just loved the whole London theater scene. And I realized very quickly that being a playwright doesn't pay a lot of money. And so I went to work in a wine bar. And very quickly worked my way up the ranks there and wound up managing that wine bar. And then went to work in the British wine trade. I did sales, on-trade sales, and looked after the wine bar group for Corny Barrow in London, one of the oldest wine merchants there in London. And then did all sorts of different positions, sales, marketing, and then eventually went to Tokyo, where I became a wine buyer for a fine wine importer there, and lived there for about 5 years. And then I moved to Singapore and started working for Robert Parker and Wine Advocate. I should mention that I met Robert Parker while I was in Tokyo. I was organizing and sourcing the wines for a couple of big events that he was doing in Tokyo in the early 2000s with Joel Robuchon at a couple of Joel Robuchon's restaurants. And, we just hit it off immediately, and we kept in touch. And when he had a position that came up at the Wine Advocate, I just happened to be moving to Singapore. And he had the position to do Australia and New Zealand, which are actually very close to Singapore. So it meant that I could increase the coverage for the Wine Advocate at that time for those regions. And it was an exciting opportunity for me. And a few years later, the Wine Advocate was sold to a group of Singaporean shareholders, and I became the editor-in-chief in 2013 and remained with the Wine Advocate for a few years, and then went off and started my own thing. And so now I'm doing thewinepalate.com. Which is a wine criticism website, but it does a whole lot more too.
Wow, that's impressive.
That's it in a nutshell.
So
there's Wikipedia version.
Of course. So there's something for me that catch my attention is that this is a question. Probably being the editor, the chief editor in Robert Parker, and now with the wine palette, you must taste a lot of different wines, right? That must be very, very exciting because you have information from all over the world. There's something in that you love the most, let's say, to know a new region or a new kind of blend, or there's something that makes still, I mean, in this work, there's a lot of things that surprise, but there's something that normally surprise you, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the exciting thing about wine. It's constantly evolving and changing. And you as a critic and as a communicator about wine, you have to, evolve and adapt with where wine is going, both on the production side, but also on the consumer side. And I'm constantly reminding producers in particular, you always have to keep one eye on the consumer because you're making wine for somebody.
Yes.
And
yes.
What do they want? What do they love? So it's always a fine balance of staying true to who you are and what you do and your terroir and the grape varieties that you're working with, but also understanding where the consumer is moving to. And so I think the most exciting discoveries are those players that can evolve and adapt in exciting ways, but also newcomers into the field that maybe people haven't heard of yet, and they're doing something surprising and exciting, that I think, could be find a real place in today's marketplace.
Wow, that's well, in some point that touched us a little bit because we are very let's say innovative in terms of the winemaking that we are doing, but we will talk about that later. But it sounds very, 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 for me, exciting because to taste wines from all over the world, to see different things, all the time is something beautiful. Well, let's jump in the different vintages. Recently, you have explored some of our VIK vintage. What was your first taste of VIK? What was the first impression? What do you feel with our wine?
Well, there's a couple of standout exciting things about the wines. First of all, I love the purity, the ability to achieve brightness, which is something I don't think enough people talk about. Getting that just right moment of ripeness, so it's not overripe, it's not underripe. The brightness of the fruit. But I have to say, I was so excited that two of the wines, and it's two of the flagship top wines, are Cabernet Franc dominant, which is something that I see trending at the moment as well with consumers. But also, I just adore the grape variety. I talk a lot about Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, which are the two biggest grape varieties in terms of consumer tastes here in the United States. But Cabernet Franc, and I was very excited to see you get this like perfumed, ripe, beautiful, and yet very serious expression of Cabernet Franc, which is dominant in the vintages of the VIK and the Stone VIK that I tasted. It was very exciting.
Wow, thank you. That's something that we really work and do a big effort in since the fields. Like something for us really important in our winemaking is that we make wine in the fields first. It's something that I personally learned in France when I worked in Chateau Margaux, and we do a big effort to get that point that you mentioned. That makes me happy because to have the ripeness, not overripe nor not underripe, it's just that beautiful point where you have that expression, the fruit, the tannins are ripe but round with tension. Not it's hard to get there, and we do a big effort for that. And well, let's talk a little bit about the vintage 2022, which is a very special vintage because in some moment there was a kind of sensation that it was a little bit warmer than the 21. But in fact, I have here some numbers where we can see that the 2021 was in the last 10 and 100 years the number 2 or three in the 100 more warm, but the 22 was one of the 19 more warm again. So it was cooler than the 21. The average temperature of the 21 was almost 1 degree Celsius over the 22. And the minimum temperature for the 21 also was 1 degrees over the 22. So finally, and then also the spring, the summer, and the autumn was classified for the 22 cold, and the summer cold and warm. But the 21 was the summer warm and the spring warm. So finally, the numbers, the weather broadcast says that the 22 was a little bit fresher than the 21. So when you taste the 22, what was the impression? How was for you the flavor, the tannins, the style of that wine, the personality of that wine?
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because, I always say, wines don't lie, and there is a real vibrancy, brightness, freshness about the 22s that I absolutely love. It's not showing any heat or, extreme, heat spikes or anything like that. Just, beautiful and fragrant as well. I love the perfume of the wines. And that only comes with a little bit more freshness in a vintage, just what you're saying, those sort of floral and, delicate spice characters the baking spice characters rather than exotic spice characters that you might get with a warmer vintage. These are all of the things that I'm seeing, that brightness, that perfume, that freshness with the 2022s that I thought was quite exciting, actually. And I think it really plays to your choice of dominant grape variety in that vintage as well, using the Cabernet Franc, because it brings out the beauty and the elegance of the Cabernet Franc.
Wow, thank you again. It's true that this wine for me shows something kind of a vibrancy, movement, tension. It's that beautiful freshness that makes the wine also very elegant, but in very in balance. In balance, not unbalanced. In balance. Very. There's not too much. It shows perfume. Very very fine. The 22 was a little bit tricky that year because there was a kind of a wave in December that the temperature goes a little bit up. So some part of the industry, they start to harvest quick after that in February. We wait a little bit. Something funny is that this year, the 25, the last vintage, it happens something very similar, but a little bit more. At the end of January, at the moment of the variation, so it happens the same thing. A lot of different colleagues, they start to harvest earlier, and we wait a little bit because then the temperature goes down again, and that helps a lot to ripe the tannins, to have that beautiful finish in the wine. But yeah, it's really fresh. But I would like to go into something that you mentioned, the Cabernet Franc, and that part that you find now in the market in US, some new Cabernet Francs. That's in terms of your vision and your experience, is something that arrived to stay, or it's something that it's just for the moment?
No, I don't think it's. I'll tell you why I think that we're seeing this, uptick in interest in Cabernet Franc is not necessarily because the flavors or the style of Cabernet Franc is suddenly appealing to people. It's, I think, because more people around the world are making better Cabernet Franc than they ever have. And it's the same with Chardonnay. Chardonnay went through a very difficult period where, it was over oaked and, clumsy malolactic. And it was like these big oak bomb butterball wines that, consumers found very difficult to drink. And, they didn't really want more than a little taste because they were just too heavy and oily and terrible. Now, Chardonnays are elegant and they're fresh and they're, shimmery and vibrant and a lot of producers around the world from Australia to our California Central Coast and Sonoma Coast and Oregon are making all of these wonderful Chardonnays. It's the same with Cabernet Franc. I'm seeing, people are understanding that you can't just treat it like Cabernet Sauvignon. And that's, particularly true here in Napa Valley.
Mm-hmm.
The impetus, I think, in the past was to sort of, treat it exactly the same, whereas it's a very different grape variety. It needs, it has different, heat and terroir requirements. It has different ripening curve. It has, it requires different winemaking. And I think people who are producing are a lot more sensitive to the grape variety, or winemakers are a lot more sensitive to the grape variety than they have been in the past. And they're producing, really bringing out the Cabernet Franc rather than trying to make it look like a Cabernet Sauvignon, which is, for me, that's what's so exciting about the grape variety. And that's why consumers are going, hey, wow, this is, a new take on Cabernet Franc, and I really like it. And that's why it's exciting. Also, oftentimes Cabernet Franc can have a little bit more savoriness, freshness, perfume than Cabernet Sauvignon. So, it offers something slightly different, but still have, that structure that people are looking for and that density that they're looking for. It's not a Pinot Noir look-alike. It is more in the, Bordeaux varieties type of signature. But it's just, a little bit, maybe prettier and more elegant when it's done properly than a big, rich, Cabernet Sauvignon.
And in terms of this new sensation or vision, or this new information that people now it's getting, how the innovation and it's playing that word. You said at the beginning that part of one of the good thing of this that to taste different wines and countries and regions are also new wines or personalities of wines that comes. Innovation has something in that part. There's some in this new era of the Cabernet Franc and Chardonnays, and that also innovation it's helping to change that way to present the wine.
Absolutely. I think it starts in the vineyard, of course. Everything, for great wine has to start in the vineyard. And then finding, maybe slightly cooler areas that Cabernet Franc love. And really, like I said, focus on, bringing out the perfume. You need to ripen it, of course. The thing about Cabernet Franc is you can get really sort of green leafy characters if it's not, beyond a certain threshold. But at the other end of the spectrum, if you're in a spot that's just too hot for Cabernet Franc, then you're just going to get these sort of jammy characters. And again, probably green characters because, it just stops somewhere, in terms of ripening out the pyrazines. So you could have that kind of overripe, underripe kind of character that's really particularly nasty in Cabernet Franc. So I think, a lot of winemakers, are looking at the sensitivity of the grape variety and making sure it's in the right spot, making sure that, they're harvesting at the right time. And then in the winery, maybe doing cold maceration, to bring out some of the perfume earlier on and to get, finer tannins later on so they're not extracting too much from seeds and harsher tannins. So I think there's a lot more sensitivity to the precise needs of the grape variety than we've seen before. And the results are just stunning. And that's why I think it's creating a lot of excitement with consumers. I hear more and more consumers talking about how they hadn't really, noticed Cabernet Franc before. Well, it's because it was kind of boring before.
Yes.
Now it's like exciting in a lot of areas. And for me, it's exciting. I think this is the finest, the VIK, and also the Stone VIK, which of course is a different vintage. It was I think the Stone VIK I tasted was 2024.
Yes.
But still, I mean, both of them being, Cabernet Franc dominant. Wow, I was like really impressed. And from Chile, that was the first time I'd seen, the grape variety really sort of standing out on, head and shoulders above, a lot of other regions out there. It was impressive and exciting.
Wow. Well, thank you. Let's jump into the VIK 22. I have to tell you that this bottle, it's really one of those bottles that gives you a beautiful flavor. Wow, the aromas are fantastic. But in terms of the wine, for example, in this case, that this wine has been in barrel for 26 months. But we do what we call our barrel program is barroir. So we make the barrels at the winery, and we toast the barrels with our own oak trees at the property. So these wines now. Sorry.
That's impressive. So, what is the species of oak trees that you have there?
It is the Chilean oak. It's not exactly as the French oak. It's part of the family, but it's not the same exactly the same kind of oak. It is of the family of oak. It's less aromatic in terms of the kind of vanilla, coconut. That you have the American oak is the one that has more of that than the.
It's so weird because when I was tasting this one, I was like, I was trying to place the oak because I was thinking, did they use a little American oak or? Because it's somewhere in between the French and the American oak. It's not quite, but yes. It does have a little bit more spiciness to the oak than I normally pick up in the French oak. Yes. So I was wondering about that.
Yes, it has less than the American, less than the French oak, because we have 700 millimeters per year here, not 1,500 like in Nevers or Tronchet, Allier in France. Yeah. So each ring is very, very small. That makes this oak very, very compressed, very. And it's less aromatic because the rings are smaller. And so when we toast the barrel with our oak, we are giving less of that flavor to the barrel, and also we are doing very low or light toast. Even if we compare to the one that sell you like another one, a tonality that sell you a light toast barrel, we toast lighter than that because what we want is to give the fruit of our grapes to show the personality of the first aromas, fruit, spicy, that comes from the grapes more than chocolate, mocha, coffee, which is toast. So that's a little bit the question because. How integrated do you feel the oak and the wine?
Yes, I think it's obviously I can see the oak there, but give it another year or two, and I think that's going to melt right in there. And I like it, but it was good I could see it because I thought I found it fascinating. And what you say makes sense because I never even thought that you'd be using your own oak trees. But I couldn't place the oak, and I was like, okay, where is this coming from? What is happening here? Is it a combination of different types of oak from different countries? But it makes total sense now, and I like the use of oak on there. Like I said, I could just about pick it out, but there's enough fruit. I mean, the fruit is very dense. It's got lots of layers to the fruit, and they're tightly stacked. And I can see that, with another year or two, even because 2022, it's had a little bit of time already in bottle. But I can see, the way that it's developing, that oak is going to melt right in. I don't have any concerns about that. And I thought it was a very smart, use of oak. I just liked it, the way that it contributed just a little bit to the tannin, to the texture, and just a little bit of spice to the flavor without overpowering those, pretty Cabernet Franc dominant nuances, the perfume that you get. A little bit of red fruit character along with the black fruit. Very pretty.
Well, yeah, that's something that we have been working since 2018. The story of this wine, of our story has been also always our philosophy, holism. And since there, we integrate nature in our winemaking and our, process. We create this circular winemaking in 2018 where we decide to use only the resources that we have at the property. It's the year that we start with Barroir, our barrel program, barrel and terroir, make the barrels and toast it with our own oak. Amphoras and terroir. This wine has 14% of the wine has been in clay pots that we made with our own clay from the property.
I read that. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, that gives a lot of... it helps the minerality to make the wine very clean. Helps to, the acidity marks a little bit, that beautiful acidity that makes you salivate a little bit. It also it helps with the clay pots and to preserve the fruit, the intensity of the fruit, and the pores of those. Clay pots, it's very special because it's our clay, so it's unique. It's from the place. That's the idea of this circular winemaking. And something also unique of these wines since 2018 is that we have been always fermenting the wine with wild yeast. The wild yeast come with on the bunch, right? But in 2018 we start to look for wild yeast in the whole property. Let's say we have 330 hectares planted, and the property is 4,300. So we said, okay, we have 90% that we are not using. How we can get flavors from there? And the idea was to find wild yeast. But how we bring the wild yeast to the winery, that was the question. And we found that the flowers, they had a huge quantity of wild yeast inside because they are very sticky inside to catch the pollen. So that also catch the yeast. So we harvest flowers to bring this wild yeast to the winery. And since 2018, we add these flowers on the skins. We select 12 out of 78 flowers because those 12 doesn't give any flavor, color, or aromas. Because the flower is not important. What is important is the yeast that is inside. So, for example, we have chamomile, so we don't use it because that one gives flavors, right? So we found 12 that they don't give anything to the wine, and we use them to bring the wild yeast. And this wine has been fermented with the wild yeast that come on the bunch, plus the ones that we add with this program, where we found since 2018 that we have 3 new strains of yeast now fermenting in the wine because of this program. Something unique to make this more kind of supernatural. I don't know how to call it, because it's not just the yeast that you have on the bunches, also the yeast that it's surrounding your vineyard. That give us a little bit more layers. That's the way that we are now making our wine. And Stone VIK, the other Cab Franc that you do taste, which is 24, goes a little bit beyond of that, because we let that wine age up in the mountain at 1,000 meters over the sea level, just between the trees, and it's totally connected with nature. It's not in the warehouse where we control the temperature, the humidity. The aging is outside in nature. Nature takes care of it. It's totally connected to the forest. You know, the amphoras, the roots approach to the amphoras, and the amphoras are connected to to the forest. It's an amazing wine. That's the concept that we are working on now. Also regenerative agriculture and not intervention. We want our wines to be the flavor or the most pure flavor of our place without intervention, flavor from outside.
Boom. I just wanted to ask one question about the Stone Vic,
Yes.
which a wine I loved. I thought, it's just as fascinating as it was delicious. But I noticed on the label, it said it's the ultimate natural wine. And, natural wine has become a kind of controversial term, I suppose, for modern consumers. And I just wanted to clarify, do you use any sulfites or anything like that with the winemaking for that?
Yes, we use a little bit at the beginning. In terms of Stone Vic is the one that has less sulfites in our wines. It's when you use natural in some markets. And there's no one thing to describe natural, right? Yeah, that's the point. So in some market, for example, they ask you to have less than 40 ppm of sulfur, but in other markets there are no rules for this. So, so if we talk about less sulfur in this case, we have less than normal, and very close to that 40 ppm. But that's why we go with ultimate, because it's not just low sulfur; it's connected in every sense with nature. Because this wine,
I love that.
This wine, it's made as we work organic. The fields, we take part of the biodynamism in terms that we work with the rhythm of life, like the moon, and now this wine is connected to the stars, the sun and the moon. I will explain you that. And then no intervention, so wild yeast. There's nothing from outside. And when it's up there in the mountains, we found an energetic point. That energetic point was the inspiration to place the amphoras like a Stonehenge. Okay. So these amphoras are placed as a Stonehenge to be connected with the rhythm of the moon and the sun during the solstice and the equinox. So that's connect the wine with the sun, for example. During the equinox, the sun transmits the energy through the water that we found there, and that goes to the amphoras, and that makes the amphoras vibrate, for example. That helps the tannins to polymerize. This energetic point is in a crack. No, not a fault. A fault. So this place is it's moving all the time, crossed by a water table. That generates the energetic point, because it's moving all the time because of this fault. These amphoras are vibrating all the time, like when you play music in the barrel warehouse, for example. This is the same, but natural. That also helps to polymerize the tannins and to make it more round and soft. That's explain why this wine, being 2024, you have very round and soft tannins. It's nature, just nature.
I love it. I love it. That's just such an original concept. But at the end of the day, it really works because the wine is seriously good. I was very impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, we were, when we started with this idea, we present that idea to the family, and they say that let's do it. That was 2023. That was the first one. And the idea was to release this wine before a year. But that was the challenge, because at the beginning we didn't know exactly what will happen. We found the idea was to find a place where to place the amphoras, to let the forest to be the guardian of this wine. But when we were looking for a place, we found this energetic point, and everything changed. Then we found all this, and it was 1,000 meters over the sea level. That makes the pressure or less pressure at that altitude, right? So that helps the convection movement to be faster, and also you have more. The wine is rotating more fast, more. It more polymerization, and that explained the quality of the tannins. But that was at the end, or in the middle of this project, because we found this place. Then we place the amphoras like a Stonehenge, and we give this sense to the wine. That's why we call it Stone VIK. At the beginning, it wasn't like that till we found the energetic point. And everything get together naturally here in this wine. That's what is beautiful of this concept, because we were finding new things, and everything get into this concept and help us to get this quality in the wine. So we were super happy, let's say. And something unique is that the first one, we take Cabernet Franc up there, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Carmener. And we discovered that the 5 amphoras with Cabernet Franc, they were totally different because of the distance to the center. So the 24, the one that you taste, what is unique is that year we take the blend up to the mountain. So each amphora has the same wine. And after 8 months, the 14 amphoras were totally different because of the distance to the center.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's so cool.
It is cool. So finally, the intention was to blend energy. And in fact, we took one out, which it was the 13. The number 13, we took it out, and we blend all the others, and that's the wine that you taste. It's amazing what how nature helped us to get this quality. It's amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow. And so what was the first vintage you did of the Stone VIK?
23, the two, yeah.
Oh, so it's brand new. This is only the second vintage.
The second vintage.
Wow.
And the 25, in fact, it's already up there, waiting till the 21st of December. We racked the wine out not more than rack. We moved the wine out of the amphoras because we do it with gravity. The 21st of December, and we bottled the wine every 21st of December, which is the solstice of the summer in the South Hemisphere.
Wow.
It has
how long does it spend in the amphora?
Well, it's 1 month. The fermentation in new barrel, specially toasted for this wine, 1 month, malolactic. After that, goes up to the mountain, and it's about 8 months in the amphoras, out in the mountains. So the whole winter and the whole spring. And because the 21st of December is the beginning of the summer, right? So
that is fascinating. How quickly you achieve that level of polymerization, as you say, because it seems like it's been aged for a lot longer than that. When you look at the smoothness and the velvetyness of the wine,
yes,
that is fascinating.
It is. That was what we found with the 23. And it's amazing because the discussion now is like, you taste this wine, it's round, soft, it's 24, but also gives you the impression that you can keep this wine for a long time. So it's kind of a paradox. It's like, what?
Yeah, crazy. And that's when I was tasting it. I was like, oh, it's a 24. It's going to be like some, kind of, nouveau type of wine, but it's a serious wine. It's got, serious level of tannin, a structure, and it's built to age. Again, that's kind of why I was asking about the sulfites as well, because it's pure. There's, absolutely, you have these images when you hear about natural wine, I've been to Georgia earlier this year and tasted a lot of natural wines that weren't necessarily pure like that.
Yes.
But there's this wonderful purity. But there's also, as you say, it feels like it was like either in amphora or inert vessels, maybe, neutral oak, for a lot longer than 8 months, because, everything's so married and the tannins are so plush, and yet there's a high level of them. It's fascinating to look at a wine like that. I've never tasted anything like that.
Yes, it's really, really beautiful how nature it's involved. It's part of the wine. That's why we said that we create wines with, through, and for nature. It's really incorporated in our wines. Well, now we're working, but this is for another conversation. Now we're working on our white wines and also have kind of a concept like this. Not the same because Stonebeek is unique. It's on the hills, but will be something also with the rhythm of the life, and the concept will be very unique and beautiful too. Very connected to nature. So we have been talking some few minutes. So the last part, Lisa, is something that normally we want to share with people and also to help the wine lovers or the wine, the people that love wine. How you see the market, how you feel that we as a industry, wineries, winemakers, the sales, all the industry, also journalists, all master of wines like you, how we have to work in order to make people to continue getting in the wine and this beautiful history of wine. What we have to do, how you see the market. Please give us your impression and what do you think about it?
It's a big question.
Yes, very long. So we have 30 more minutes.
I'll give you the Wikipedia version. I think in a nutshell again is we need to learn to speak to consumers in ways, or learn to communicate to consumers in ways that they're assimilating information nowadays. I feel like in the wine industry, we can be so slow to adapt to where consumers are moving and where people are and the world's developing so quickly right now. Let's face it, with AI in particular, but also in terms of apps and the way people are using things like Airbnb and Amazon, and these are the way that they purchase items nowadays and experiences. And yet the wine industry is like this old curmudgeon that doesn't change, and still it kind of speaks over people's head with jargon that they don't really understand, and we're just as guilty in the wine criticism world, waving about these wine scores, and score inflation is a real thing. And so, we need to consider ways that we can communicate and help people find wines that they're going to love in an easier way, in a way that they've come to purchase other items, and that's kind of why I developed the wine palette, is because I wanted to do things a bit differently than everybody else. We look at a lot of wine websites; they're just cookie cutter models of everything that's been before, and the tasting, and the score, and all of that. I wanted to make it a bit different. I wanted to, first of all, focus a lot on the storytelling. And so, do more of the individual stories on the wineries that people need to know about. I have to say yours is a very exciting story. And I'm definitely going to be putting your story up there on the website, but also, how people find the wines that they love, and if you look at, for example, those websites that I mentioned, Airbnb and Amazon, they've got, a very complicated and in-depth filtering system so that people can dial in very precisely the types of product or experiences that they're looking for. And, with us, like I said, we're kind of stuck in the, here's a tasting note and here's a score. But that's not really working for consumers anymore. And so when I developed the wine palette, I wanted to be able to put in a lot of filters for every single wine. Mm-hmm. This probably sounds quite labor intensive. And, as I was first developing the system and first, working on what I call a wine mapping process, because every single wine is actually mapped in the background against 25 different filters and parameters.
Okay.
And so, but what it means is that people can either go to the wine palette matcher page and they can dial in the exact wine experience they're looking for. For example, if they like high tannins, but a velvety texture with moderate acidity, they can dial that in for any given grape variety, region, style, anything. And there's a whole, aromatic compounds, everything. You can dial it in. But a lot of consumers don't even, know what those terms mean. And, it's for most people, they don't really want to have to learn what it means. It's a lot to learn, wine. And so in that case, all they need to do is know and put in a wine that they've loved before. So say it's a bottle of the 2022 VIK. They love this wine. They're like, I love this wine. I want to find something similar to it in the database. If they put that in and it's in the database, what will come up is not only a review for that wine and also a description and a short description that's based on all the filters that it's mapped against, but it will also come up with all of the palate matches, all of the other wines in the database that are a close match to it. And it will say, whether it's a 98.7% match or, 92% match or a 76% match, whatever. Based on an algorithm that I created that uses all of those parameters, the 25 parameters. And basically it will come up with a list of wines that are stylistically very close to a wine that they already love. So it gives them an opportunity to explore other wines very easily. And I think, that's the kind of thing. We just need to make wine decisions and finding new wines easier for people. That's the point finally, because normally that's what since you were talking about in this website you have this kind of tool to help you to find this wine, which is the one that you are describing, right? That seems that it's one of the main point to make it easier to get into the wine, because sometimes wine sounds complicated or maybe and also scores aren't serving people anymore. You buy a wine because it's got a 97 point score, but you might not even like that style. All you're seeing is 97 points. Okay, but what does it taste like? What other wine is it like? And am I going to like it? So this is what we need to address, is not, if scores become increasingly meaningless, what does have meaning? And I think, having experts that can actually say, okay, this is a high, medium, low level of tannin, or, the acidity is, high, medium, or low, and so people know, roughly, oh, okay, that's what that wine tastes like. I like that style, or I don't like that style at all. And that's where we need to take them now, is, that so they can find the style of wine that they like, and then they can look at the quality level. But let's start with the style, because that's the most important thing.
Yes. Well, it looks like a beautiful tool or way to help people to get into this beautiful world. Well, maybe we'll have another conversation as soon as possible. We'll be waiting for you here in Chile, so we'll be happy to receive you here in VIK. Thank you so much for your time.
That was fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.